Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, and I am the co-host of this show. And for those of you who haven't listened to any of these episodes before, we've got a great archive of great interviews with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies, especially here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And this episode, of course, brought to you by EO San Francisco, which is a local chapter of the global EO organization, entrepreneurs organization, about 16,000 members worldwide, entrepreneurs who've reached seven figures and beyond with their business and want to connect together and learn and share experiences together. And I personally, my name is John Corcoran. I'm a member of EO San Francisco on the board. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And my guest here today is Phillip Baltazar. He's a business advisor, a serial entrepreneur, Culture Index licensee, which we'll talk about what that is as well. They've been kind enough to be an EO San Francisco sponsor of our program, which has been a great partnership for us. And you got to check out this guy's background. We're going to get into it in a moment, but formerly Division I wrestling. Okay, from that to professional ballet to acting off Broadway, did some television, opened and operated a number of restaurants around New York City, catering business, event planning, enterprise mortgage banking. I mean, there's a bit of everything here, and I'm sure it all makes sense now, but I got to get into all the background behind all this. So now he's a strategic advisor, works with businesses to help them to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. We've all heard that before, but how does the rubber hit the road on that one? We're going to get into that here in a moment. And Phillip, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. So first of all, I mean, tell me about this crazy background. So wrestling to professional ballet, I mean, that must have gone over really well with your wrestling teammates for sure.
Well, listen, forget about the wrestling teammates. Let's talk about my father. He's retired, Air Force major, older brother, Army colonel, younger brother, Navy SEAL. And I decide, man, I'm going to go down this other path here, right? And so how it happened is I had been awarded a scholarship to wrestle at West Virginia University, right? And I did a year there, got redshirted, came to California, came back, and was at George Mason University, walking through the halls, wanting, and again, I didn't mention this, but believe it or not, Chippendales, like I actually did a stint at Chippendales as a waiter, and that's when I saw these guys dancing, and I said, you know what, I can do that, man, whatever I got to do. So I went back to Virginia. I'm walking through the hallways. I'm enrolling in school, and my parents wanted me to do a business background because I'd started a business building brick patios on the top of Mount Soledad here in La Jolla, California. I'm walking through the hallways there, and the wrestling coach, Baltazar, what are you doing? I need a 167-pounder. I said, sorry, coach. I said, look, I hung up my wrestling shoes. I'm going to study business. And he gave me all this stuff. And so he pulls me back on the team. So first day of practice. And so when I was signing up for my curriculum, it was all business, accounting, economics, But I'm driving home and I'm like, you know what? I really want to be an actor. So I turned the car around. I went back to school. I changed my entire curriculum and they said I had to take a dance class. So one was ballet and the second one was modern. And I thought modern was what I saw at Chippendales, right? So I signed up for modern, and the first day of class, I was in the dressing room the dressing room and the locker room. I'm calling it a dressing room now. I'm getting them all mixed up, right? I'm in the locker room. I got my GMU wrestling t-shirt on, GMU wrestling sweats, right? And my buddies are saying, where are you going? I said, I got a PE class, right? So I slipped out the door and I get up to the stairs and I open this door to the dance studio. And you could have heard a pin drop. It was like all women, right? And a female teacher. And she looks up at me and she says, can I help you? And I said, yeah. I said, is this Dance 101? And she says, yeah. And I said, well, I'm Phil Baltazar. I'm in your class. You could have heard the second pin drop, right? So check this out. This was like the hardest thing I had ever tried to do with my body, right? In high school, I was captain of the wrestling team, captain of the football team, captain of the track team, right? But going into this dance class, it was like, I felt like I had to completely re-educate my body because wrestling and it's all like, a contract and and pulling it all in. Dance is all about elongating, right? So I start the whole thing, and I fell in love with it because I didn't have to beat anyone up to prove that I was good, right?
Mm.
And I didn't make it to nationals that year. I only placed fourth in our regionals. So I decided to quit school, and I moved into Washington D.C. and I found my teacher who had a studio there. And I
Now,
said,
Washington D.C. doesn't not necessarily a hotbed of professional ballet, is it? Or
actually, it is.
really?
Washington Ballet is a feeder for American Ballet Theater and for New York City Ballet.
Ah,
So
okay.
it is a big center there.
Hmm.
So I walked in and I said to the director, Mary Diaz, I said, "Hi, my name's Phillip Baltazar," and I said, "I want to be a dancer. I'd like a scholarship." So she gave me a scholarship. I moved in and I attacked dance like it was an athletic endeavor, right? I danced 9 hours a day. I waited tables at night, went back to the studio. I mean, and then within a year, I started performing, and I was asked to come up to New York City, and I got into the Joffrey School of Ballet, and I studied there. And then my career just took off. I started dancing all over the country,
Hmm.
got a job in Kansas City Ballet, worked my way from apprentice to soloist there. And then my girlfriend and I went to Europe, as a lot of Americans do. You tour around and you audition in different companies. And so the goal is, if you get a job in Europe, unlike the US, in the US, maybe you get 30 weeks of employment, and the rest of the time you're unemployed. In Europe, you get a job with a state theater, you sign a 13-month contract. You dance for 12 months, and then you got a 13-month of vacation, paid vacation.
Wow.
In America, it's unheard of as a dancer that you get paid vacation, right? So I had this incredible career. I danced for kings and queens. I danced around the world. I performed cabaret in Berlin when they were celebrating their 750th anniversary of the city. So I had this incredible career. I come back back to New York, and I decide that, hey, you know what? My artist needed to speak. So ballet and dance is a mute art form, right? So I'll become an actor. So I became an actor, and it was during that time that I met some enchanted evening in a restaurant. So I walked in, and I saw my wife to be across the room, and our eyes clicked, and I walked up to her and I said, "May I be so bold as to sit down and introduce myself?" And the next thing you know, we were together, and that's a long story. But we got married, and we wanted to buy a house or buy a co-op in New York City, right? So we had to get a mortgage. And so I didn't even know how to spell mortgage at the time, right? But so we went and applied to a bunch of different companies. We got denied because I'm an actor, entrepreneur. She's an academic. She's at NYU grad school. So we got turned down, I think denied 4 or 5 times. And then finally I figured it out of what they were looking for. So I walked into the Kingsford Corporation, which was on Madison Avenue and 33rd Street at the time. And I said, "Who's Kingsford?" And so they point out to the corner office, and I knock on the door, and this is like out of central casting. This big old guy sitting behind the desk, right? He's smoking a cigar, right? And he's on the telephone. And I said, and he goes, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Are you Kingsford?" And he says, "Yeah." I'm sorry, that's when he goes, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's find out." So I walk into his office, I close the door, and I sat down in front of him. So he tells the guy on the telephone, "Look, let me call you back." So I took my file and I gave it to him. I said, "Here, help me to understand why you can't give me this mortgage, because I'm going to show you how." And he said to me, he goes, "You're the most persistent F I ever met in my life, man." And he goes through it and he says, "Okay, do you have time for lunch?" And so he takes me to lunch and he offers me a job. So I said, "Look, get me the mortgage and I'll come back." So he gets me the mortgage. We buy our co-op. I come back after some renovations, whatever. And I said,
"You got a job there."
Right. So he shakes my hand. He goes, "Welcome." And he sits me down. I got a rotary telephone and nothing. Right. And I had to figure.
Cold calling.
What's that?
Cold calling? Is this a boiler room style?
Well, no, it was all self-gen. So I literally had to go. I joined a networking group back then called Le Tip. So you got into this room and you had to have, there's only one profession from each or one person from each profession, right?
Yeah.
And you help each other grow your business. But man, I'm sitting on the subway with written applications, and I'm taking mortgage applications in the subway for people that I meet, right? I mean, it was by all means necessary. I used to walk by this real estate company on my way to the subway on the way back, and I popped my head in. Hey, do you have any mortgages? No, because they all had the relationship. So finally, I had this great idea, and I bought them this trash can with my name on it and my cell number. And I said, here, before you throw away any deal, you call me up, right? And that's how I started getting my business, right? And then so we ended up going. My wife had was a PhD. We went to Oaxaca, Mexico, lived there for a year, came back to California, and that's when Lending Tree was first starting. And so I found out about Lending Tree. I met Doug Lubda, the founder. And so he was coming out of his garage. I came back and he says, look, we need people in California because everyone's coming, they're shopping us on Lending Tree. And then they're taking that
quote and then going to it. Yeah.
And then
he by the way, was one of my very first podcast interviews about 12 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Doug and I are good buddies.
Yeah.
I was on his advisory board.
Nice.
Yeah. So I built my business when he was building his, and we did it together. Like I was his number one broker in the country. I was, so
you relocate from New York to California.
So I left that out. So we went to Mexico. From Mexico, Erica got a postdoc at UCSD. So we moved back, came across country, arrived here in a 1985 Land Cruiser, 2 maxed out credit cards. She's 7 months pregnant. We don't know a soul here, right? And within 10 years, I built America Funding Loans. I built a house. I built a family, right? And
what time period is this that you're doing this? Is this the 2000s?
This is, yes.
Okay.
Ricky was born in 2000. So from 2000 to 2012, I ended up, I had 100 loan officers. I had 50 here in California, and I had 50 in McLean, Virginia. And we were the largest online brokerage at that time, right?
So we all know what happened, of course, in 07, 08. How did that affect your business?
Guess what? I survived 08, man. And the rate, I was actually interviewed in the Wall Street Journal. How did you make it? Right. So I was one of the guys that adamantly, I didn't want your deal, John. I wanted your cousin's deal. I wanted your dentist deal. I wanted your mother's deal. I wanted, so there was I wasn't in it for the long game. And so when everyone started doing subprime mortgages, like for me, it's just morally, I couldn't do it. I couldn't, if someone was in the gutter, I wasn't going to kick him in the teeth and give him a mortgage, right? So for me, if any of my loan officers, if I caught any of them, because my mission statement was to deliver an enhanced mortgage experience for every consumer through exceptional pricing and superior customer service. If you met that, we took care, we were all A paper, right? We had thin margins, but we did a lot of it. That's when Costco approached me. Costco and Lending Tree used to have a partnership. Doug and they got into a big fight, man. So they split up. So Costco came to me and said, "Hey, your mission is aligned with ours here. We want to get back into the mortgage business." So I put together a consortium of 14 lenders that could manage and handle the 68 million members in Costco. Right?
Wow, it was got to be a spigot of traffic coming from them.
It was 100%. However, if you're a Costco vendor, like when everything's going great, they're still a pain in the butt, right? So imagine when you get a hiccup. I mean, they're ruthless, right? So we had to all agree on margins. We couldn't go above a certain 130 basis points, right? So again, it's member benefits, right? So no one could be out of the loop here.
Yeah, so I look at some products, Costco sells, and you wonder, like, how is the company that supplied that product as a vendor to Costco even making any money? Because sometimes they offered for so cheap.
Well, then the other thing, that's one thing, because it's volume, it's a volume play, right? You're going to have this volume, so it's a how many by when game. But you'll notice, so Costco brings in a multivitamin from, whoever. and they have to go in and completely get under the kimono to see exactly what the ingredients are. And the next thing you know, there's a Kirkland brand vitamin, right?
Yeah, right,
So
right. Is
they
that
do
what
it
they
with
did to you then?
No, they didn't. Ultimately, I ended up exiting my company, and the bank that bought me became their lead, and then they got into a scuffle. And they just recently, as of last year, shut down the whole mortgage business for Costco.
Interesting.
They've done it a couple times.
So now, how does that bring us to present day and the work that you do with Culture Index, and kind of give people an overview of what Culture Index is?
So, I was because I have been an entrepreneur. I've raised capital. I've had exits. They found me, and they came to me. Everyone that is in my position has sat in the corner office, right? Well, this is not just you got an MBA or whatever. This, everyone that does what I do within our company has battle scars, right? To prove that we've been there, right? So for me, I love mentoring, I love coaching, I love building companies. So it was a natural fit for me, and it's a way also of paying it forward, right? And so the first thing we do, but listen, let's just talk about before I talk about exactly what we do here. Let's talk about the current environment, right? The current environment in today's world.
And of course, recording this in January of 2023, which is last year, 2022, last second half of the year, especially, a lot of economic downturn, a lot of uncertainty in the economy.
55% of everyone who's working today will change jobs this year. 55%. Wow. So of that, if you look at the whole pie here, only 35% of the workforce is actively engaged. 15% are actively disengaged. And what we're talking about here are guys that do not want to come to work. And when they do come to work, they're terrorists, right? Because they're the people that are telling them how terrible the boss is, or how terrible the company is, or this and that, Yeah. So, Jack Welch says, if you pick the right people and you allow them the ability to spread their wings and fly, and you put compensation behind it, you almost don't have to manage them. And what that means is, and as entrepreneurs, we all get that, right? If you put the right people in the right places at the right time, because again, as business owners, right, the same people that got you to where you are today are not going to be the same people. Maybe they're going to get you to the next level, right? So we've got to constantly measure team engagement. And how do we do that? When you took my survey, right, we measure. This is a personality assessment tool that we have, right? We measure 7 work-related traits: autonomy, sociability, pace and patience, conformity, energy units, which is mental stamina, logic, and ingenuity, right? Those 7 things, when we do the survey here, come back with 2 graphs. The top graph tells me, how's John hardwired? Scientists say by the time you're 12 years old, right? And I got your survey right. By the time you're 12 years old, this is you. You could take the survey 1,000 times, and only one chance in 3 million will it ever be different. Wow. The bottom graph, though, tells us your engagement with your current role. So that's a snapshot in time that will change. So for you mind if I read your survey back here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we have 4.
I might regret saying that in a moment, but let's see.
Say it again.
I might regret saying that in a moment.
No.
You're
going to be all good here, right? So you listen. Your most dominant trait, right, is your perfectionism. You cross the T's, dot the I's. For you, right, policy, procedure, compliance, right? That's what drives you, right? And you're a perfectionist. So
which explains I went to law school. So it makes sense. Yep.
How easy is it for you to delegate?
It's been a challenge.
You know why?
Yeah.
Who can do anything as good as you can, right? But here's the deal. For every plus that you have, there's a tax. So if the pluses are cross the T's, dot the I's, dutiful, loyal, all those things, right? The tax that we pay is that it's challenging for you to delegate. It's challenging for anyone to criticize, because you can't criticize perfection, right? So for you, a big part of your identity comes from your knowledge, right? What you know is what you know. So you're going to ensure that it's there. you're also a very unassuming, polite guy who's like support. It's like we're going to win together as a team, right? You prefer to deal with tangibles and technological things, right? Naturally skeptical, naturally untrusting until that's built, right? You love variety. You need, want, and seek variety, right? You love juggling stuff. You like the pressures that those time constraints give you, right?
Yeah.
That's how you are, right? And so you've got also the way that the logic looks at how do we process information. So when things come at you, you are hardwired to deal with things logically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost sometimes you're hard to read and kind of stoic. And the tax that people pay that work with you is that they might misinterpret that stoicism for you being mad or upset or whatever, but you're not. All you're doing is just right. If on the other end of the spectrum, if you were someone that processes things emotionally, you're like someone that wears their heart on their sleeve. So they would come in and everyone would know John's having a great day today. Yeah. Or oh shit, man, hit the doors here. He's having a bad day today. But you're not that. You're on the other end of it. And then we take a look at are you the type of person where we're going to have Elon Musk knock on your door and saying, hey, John, help me invent the next thing to get to the moon. No, you look at a keyboard and you say, okay, this is a keyboard. How do we improve upon what's in front of us? Right. So that's how you're hardwired. Anything that I've said or interpreted
that's pretty spot on. Yeah.
So what the second graph tells us is that in your current role right now, right, you feel like you got to be more assertive. You got to be more in front of it. You need to be more entrepreneurial. You need to be, that 30,000 foot person that can see the train or see around corners, right? You also realize or perceive that you got to be, turn on the charm a little bit, be friendlier, be more outgoing, be more optimistic, right? Also, there's a lot coming at you right now. So you're having to juggle a lot more things. And then finally, man, I got to really pay attention to the details because with all this stuff coming at me, I got to go here, right? So this is going on with and when you did this survey, this was back in July of last year. So, a lot's happened in 7 months. So when I go into companies, we take a look because, leadership's top down, right? So I have to understand the CEO, I have to understand their vision. Then I take a look at the team and when I do the team diagnostics, I'll say to the CEO to begin with, look, if you had to pull the bus over and fire everyone, tell everyone to get off the bus, who would you hire back with enthusiasm? So what we start looking at are the team members and say, okay, I'll ask them two questions. How long have they been there? And give me a score of 1 to 10 of their engagement or how good they are in your perception in the role, right? So we go through the entire team and they'll say, okay, he's a 4. Okay, what would make him a 10? Well, he'd have to be more assertive or more this or more that. And then I'd say, well, guess what? He's not wired that way, right? Einstein says, if you judge a goldfish by his ability to climb a tree, he's going to think he's stupid for his whole life, right?
Yeah.
So we go through the whole team and we take a look at where are the strengths, where are the gaps, who do you need to, and because the bottom graph is telling me, right, are you engaged? Are you mailing it in? Are you disengaged? Are you stressed out, right? So we can read all these, and people say, man, have you been following me around for 2 weeks? How do you know all this stuff? With just answering these two questions, right?
And I have to say, I saw you and your colleague do this in a room full of San Francisco board members, and it was uncanny, because I knew everyone in that room pretty well, and it was just kind of crazy. It's like you're jumping into someone's brain and telling them, their deepest thoughts and the way that they think about the world.
Well, it's the way that they're hardwired. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. And so here's the thing, we talk about hiring and how do you hire? Well, it's usually subjective, right? It's your gut feeling. Hey, the guy had a great handshake, dressed well, presented well, great reference, great resume. You know how many people lie on their resumes?
Yeah.
78%, right? So nothing matters. So what we're saying is like, look, it's analytics over emotions, right? Mm-hmm. So what we do is we want to take all that subjectivity out of it because this is science. This is math. This is the dots don't lie. So listen, we're not a recruiting firm, but what we do will help you identify what those critical traits are that are necessary to be successful in that particular role. And we have ways and technology that help us really get down to that here. But we look at that and then we start saying, okay, listen, it's kind of like, Moneyball for CEOs. We go into companies and you might say, oh my God, you know what? This tackle, this offensive tackle, he's got some hands, man. Let's move him to wide receiver. And then you take a look at the wide receiver, man, you're paying him a lot of money and he keeps dropping the ball. So you say, okay, let's move him to the defensive backfield. So we come in and we start putting people, where they're the best suited for that role.
So it seems like there's value in it in thinking about the roles before you hire for the roles, but even once people are in your roles in your organization, super valuable to just look at their present engagement and figure out if they're in the right role. And that, I imagine, helps with attrition and people being engaged at work. And one, makes the company more productive and also anticipates if someone's going to depart because they're not happy doing the work that they're doing.
I can predict with quite a lot of certainty if someone has their resume on the street or not.
Wow, interesting.
Based on what we're looking at, right? So here's the thing, making sure that you attract and retain the right talent is only 15 or maybe 10% of what we do. The other stuff, which is, and that's easy for us because it's just math, like I said. The challenge comes in is once you have them on the farm, what type of water and feed program do you put them on to ensure that they're thriving? Because guess what? If you're in the right role, doing what you're designed to do and built to do, right? You're super stoked to come to work every day.
So what do you mean by that water and feed program? Is that like a professional development type of thing, or how you coach them, or what do you mean?
Every trait, every profile. We have 19 typified, archetypes that we call them. And with these archetypes, we teach what are the needs, what are their wants, how do you motivate them, right? What are the pros, what are the cons? And here's the deal. We tend to hire people that are like us because we know ourselves and we know what we need and want. The challenge is how do you motivate and incentivize and manage people that are not like you? So, example, what's the golden rule?
Please say please and thank you.
What's that?
Please say please before you.
No, the golden rule is treat
others. Sorry, yes, of course. Treat others how you'd like to be treated. Yes,
right. That's the golden rule. We teach the platinum rule. The platinum rule is treat others like the way they want to be treated.
Interesting.
Right. So what we teach is let's put on the glasses of the person who's not like you. Right. So again, if you're one of these guys, a very assertive, very aggressive, entrepreneurial, risk taker, charger, that just wants the huge desire to win, what happens? What's the tax? You run over a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're wired the exact opposite, where you're a team player and you're unassuming and you're polite and you need a lot of direction, you look at from their glasses, you look at this guy with all that assertiveness as a bully, as a bulldozer, right? Mm. So we also do this thing that, and you probably have heard of it, the t-shirt exercise, where if I had you a t-shirt and say, okay, John, the front of your t-shirt, all the things you're proud of, law school, what you did, your businesses, what your mom says about you, what your LinkedIn profile, your resume, right? That's your billboard. The back of the t-shirt are all the things people say when you leave the room. Mm-hmm. So for us to be effective leaders and managers and executives, we have to know thyself. We have to know who we are, because only by knowing ourselves completely can we start leading. And, I promise CEOs two things. I promise to give them back their time, because a lot of times, not more times than not, right? You start a business.
Yep.
You want to be free.
To get your time, and then you find you're busy as heck.
And you're a slave to it, right? You're doing 80, 100-hour weeks, right? I give you back your time and I give you back your trust. And the way I give you back your trust is that it's transparent, right? So you don't take things personally anymore, right? Hey, this is how he's hardwired, right? Let's treat him that way. Let's support him for that. Instead of making him fit into what we want him to be, let's make sure, and listen, when we do team design, we need three elements. We need gas, we need brake, or results, and we need glue, right? The glue is the social person, someone who's going to make it fun to come to work, right? The gas is the driver, the driving all the revenue. And then, of course, you have to make sure, if I'm going to build the train, because I'm the big visionary, I got to make sure I got people on the team that are going to ensure that it runs on time, right? So it's like there has to be balance here. So when I go into a company and I say to the CEO, okay, you were at 7 million this year or last year, where do you want to be by the end of this year? I want to be at 12. Well, listen, that's a big delta here. But in order to do that, we better get a lot of gas on your team, right? A lot of assertiveness here, a lot of entrepreneurial vision, because again, there's people that live in the future that can anticipate things, and there's people that live in the present, right?
Yeah, and I'd like to mention that one of the interesting things about kind of the way that you've structured this whole program is it's not just like a one and done type of thing. Take an assessment, assess all your team, and you're done. There's an ongoing consultative component to it, and
100%.
I think that's it sounds to me the way you're describing it is that's kind of critical.
It is, because you're going to learn a new language, right? So we need everyone. When the way that it works for us is that once we decide to engage professionally, the first thing will be a 2-day executive workshop where we do this knowledge transfer, right? But we want everyone that the CEO has empowered to lead, direct, manage, incentivize, motivate, and hire to the bottom line in that room, right? Because people don't leave companies, they leave managers, right? And when I do the team assessment, when I do the team diagnostics, and I'll look at the first thing I'm asking, who's the manager? And then we take a look at everyone underneath them. And I can take a look at, is he micromanaging them? Is he not being present enough? The dots don't lie. It's analytics over instincts again, right? This is science. And so I hope I answered your question about what I meant by water and food program, because everyone needs you don't feed, different animals, the same foods, right?
Yeah. And I imagine then that means that there are times when you're kind of speaking some truth to power. What has that been like if you're in a room full of people and you're saying, there's a lot of people that are disengaged here that, and I imagine sometimes you can even tie it back to a particular manager in the room who may be in the wrong seat. What is that like for you as an experience of having to speak that frankly in a room full, an organization, that kind of tell them this stuff?
Well, listen, going in there, we let them know we're known for two things in our industry. We're known for our statistical accuracy. We have the highest accuracy in our vertical. And number two, we're known for our radical candor. So I'll ask the question, right? Do you want me to be academic, or do you want me to take the gloves off? Right? And of course, I have to
get permission.
What's that?
You get permission, basically. Yeah.
I have to ask it, right? Because here's the deal. I can read every single graph to someone and make them feel like $1 million, right?
Yeah,
like
tell them the good stuff. Yeah.
There's no such thing as a bad profile, right? And there's no such thing as a bad trait. Every trait has its purpose here. The issue happens when we put the wrong people in a role, right? One of our biggest mistakes that we make as business owners and entrepreneurs is that we take some stud who's killing it for us, or some great saleswoman, or someone who's really, top notch, and we say, because they're killing it, let's make them a manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those are different skill sets.
Yeah.
Right. I'm working I have a plumbing company down here, a new client here, the 250 employee company, and been around for 50 years. And of course, loyalty has been a huge deal. So they always want to promote from within. So I go in there, and there are so many people that just said, when the owner said, hey, we want to move you up to this thing here. And then I go in there, they're turned inside out. I mean, they're coming to work every day stressed because they'd prefer just to stay in the field and be a plumber. Why are you making me a manager? Right.
Yeah.
So, it's all about, again, right people, right seats. And then this whole thing you hear about, the quiet quitting, right? Or I heard what last week was like, act your wage, right? Act your wage, or the so the thing is, if you're doing what you're designed to do, you're loving life, right? You're coming, you're stoked, you're being supported. We teach, let's celebrate everyone's unique talents and gifts that they bring to the table, because everyone comes to the table with different gifts, right? Now, and we teach you, how do you manage someone who's different than you? What kind of motivation they need. Someone who's a big social person, they want to come in and they want to talk to you about the weekend and da-da-da-da-da. And when they get a prize, they want everyone to know about it because they're the queen of the party. Da-da. But if you're built the opposite way, you would prefer to deal with things that don't talk back. So you give them acknowledgement by tapping them on the shoulder. Hey, John, great work with that podcast today, man. You really pulled out that information. Da, 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 da. It's very specific. It's one-on-one, and it's what they want, right? Don't ever try to pull someone who's built that way up to the stage, man, right? They're going to freak out. So again, it's knowing how people are built and learning how to incentivize and motivate them and coach them the way that they want to coach. Because if we're going to, the good news about, well, here's the deal. If 55% of the workforce today will change jobs, there's good news and there's not so good news. The good news is whatever you're looking for, the talent you're looking for, it's out there, right? You might say, we can't find them. Well, guess what? They're out there and they're looking. The not so good news is that if you don't ensure that they are engaged and actively engaged, they're going to be part of that statistic.
Yeah. Phillip, this has been great. I'm sure we could go on for hours. But where can people go to connect with you, reach out to you if they have questions, learn more about the work that you do?
Thank you. So there's a link that will be in the notes, right? If you click that, I'm offering everyone that's listening here a complimentary team diagnostics, right? And if you don't get to that thing, it's I'll say it very slow. My name is Phillip Baltazar, but my email address is Baltazar, Baltazar at cultureindex.com, or you can look me up on LinkedIn, Phillip Baltazar, and you can just DM me there.
Excellent. Yep. We'll put the link in the show notes. Phillip, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, John. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.